What's up everybody, Jared here with carbuzz.com, and this is the all-new BMW i5. The 8th generation of BMW's 5 Series comes out later this year, but I have been given an extra special early opportunity to drive a nearly done pre-production prototype of specifically the all-electric i5. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at it. Let's begin with an exterior walk around of the i5, and unlike our normal videos, because this is a prototype, there's going to be quite a bit that I can't really show you. As you can see, the entire car is covered in this really cool camo wrap. Now, you're not going to be able to buy this, obviously. It's meant to fool your eyes so that you can't quite see the final design. Now, there are some things that we can kind of peek through and see behind this wrap, including the kidney grille, which, as you can see, looks a lot smaller than what we've seen on a lot of recent BMWs, like the i7 and the M3 and the M4. So if you're one of those people that loves to type angry internet comments saying that BMW's grills have gotten too big, I think you're really going to enjoy this new BMW i5 and the gas-powered 5 Series. This one that we're checking out is the all-electric i5. Now right here we can see the wheels, which I'm not 100% sure if these are going to be the final design, but what I do know about the i5 is that it's going to be available with wheel sizes ranging from 19 up to 21 inches. That is the first time you've been able to get a 21-inch wheel on the standard 5 Series that's not an M5. We're also going to get on this new generation of 5 Series the recessed door handles that are common on a lot of other BMWs right now, including the new BMW M2 that I just drove. And we've got this electrified vehicle sticker here, which is what you have to have on the camo when you're testing a vehicle like this. We're doing this on BMW's secret proving grounds in France, but when you go out on the road, you have to have that little sticker letting people know that you have an electrified vehicle. We've got our charge port back here, which unfortunately I can't open. I also don't know how fast this BMW i5 is going to charge, or how big the battery is, or how big the trunk is, because unfortunately on this prototype, BMW would not let me open it. What I do know is that the BMW i5 for this generation and the 5 Series in general are a little bit longer than the 5 Series they replace, and probably not for America, but we will have a 5 Series sedan like the one we're looking at, and there will also be a 5 Series touring wagon. Now at this point, I usually open up the doors and show you the full interior, but as you could maybe tell from over my left shoulder, most of this interior is completely covered up because this is a prototype, and I can only show you this one very specific angle. So since I can't really show you the rest of the interior, let's go get the i5 out on the road. All right, so now I'm behind the wheel of the BMW i5, and since this is just a drive of a prototype, I don't have the sort of full specifications for this car, but I do have some interesting details that I can share with you now. There are going to be 2 versions of the i5 available in the US. You're going to be able to get the eDrive 40, which is going to be a single motor rear drive version, and then they are going to have the M60 variant, which is going to be xDrive, meaning that it is all-wheel drive and it has 2 motors, one on the rear axle and one on the front axle. So we're doing the street drive in the base eDrive 40 version, which has about 340 horsepower on its single electric motor. So that is a little bit more than what you're going to get on the BMW i4. So already we're seeing progress from BMW with their electric cars. And based on my experience with the i4, I think this is the version that a lot of people are going to be perfectly comfortable with, because you put your foot down and listen, it's not gonna pin you back to your seat aggressively, but this thing has plenty of performance. I mean, we're talking about the same performance level really that you'd get from a 6-cylinder 5 Series. You've got better body control because you have all of the weight down low in the battery, so you have the added benefit of that. And because there's no transmission that you need to go through the gears with, if you're ready for acceleration now, you get it now, instantly. Like I said, doesn't not super pin you back in your seat, but it is good enough, I think, for most people. You are not going to be disappointed with the acceleration, even on this single motor version of the i5. All right, so now I'm on the highway to test out BMW's improved highway assistant function. Now, this debuted on the BMW 7 Series, but here on the i5, they've actually made some really nice improvements to it. First of all, to activate it, they've made it much simpler. One button, you just click it, and now your adaptive cruise control is on. And BMW wanted this function to be seamless. They didn't want it to be like a Tesla, where while it's activated, if you try and do your own corrections on the wheel, it will shut off. It's also better than GM's Super Cruise in that way as well, because when you're in Super Cruise function, if you try to do your own thing on the steering wheel, it's going to just deactivate, or if you're on just kind of a regular B road, there's no steering assist at all. So this is really nice in that you can be on just a normal road with your highway assistant, and you don't even need to move the steering wheel to let it know that you're paying attention. All you need to do is put about 3 fingers on the wheel, and it will sense that you are paying attention. So driving around just with a little light pressure on the steering wheel, and it'll do most of the steering for you. Now, the part that I'm here to test is the hands-free part. So right now I'm driving on the highway, my hands are on the wheel, but I can just take them off. I don't have to hit any additional buttons for it to do that. As long as I am on a divided access highway like so, I can just transfer my hands onto the wheel or off of them like so whenever I want. And the other really advanced thing that BMW has added here is automatic lane changes. So there's 2 ways that you can do that. So I'm going to show you the first way, which is just using the turn signal. So I put the turn signal on to the right, and we moved over. I didn't have my hands on the wheel for that. So right now we're behind this slow truck. It's asked me if I want a lane change, and what I'm going to do is look over onto the driver's side mirror, and just like that, it did a lane change for me automatically. I didn't even have to trigger it. That is some really cool technology. And let's just say now I don't want to go as fast. I reduce my speed, and I just look over this way towards the camera and towards my passenger mirror, and it does another lane change for me. This is possibly the best hands-free driving that I have ever sampled because of the automatic lane changes, the seamless nature of being able to take your hands on and off of it, and the simplicity of only pushing one button. To this date, General Motors Super Cruise, I think, has been my favorite hands-free driving software, and there hasn't really been too much competition from anybody else, but I think that BMW might have just overtaken GM in this area. Now, in terms of range, we don't know how big the battery size is going to be on the i5. There is only going to be one battery between the eDrive 40 and the M60 versions, but BMW gave me some preliminary estimates. So they are targeting an EPA range of about 295 miles. They didn't go into too much more detail than that, but basically from that number, we can extrapolate that the battery is going to be a little bit smaller than the one that's in the i7. This is a smaller car, and they wanted it to be lighter after all. So the range on this isn't quite as good as it is on the i7. And that number, that 295 mile number that I just quoted, that is going to be for this eDrive 40 version with the single motor. If you step up to the dual motor version, the M60, that is probably going to lower that range estimate just a bit. But something to remember here, 295 miles. I know it's not that magic 300 number that a lot of people are looking for, but remember that is just an estimate, and BMW always likes to be quite conservative with its numbers, whether that be horsepower, 0 to 60, what have you. BMW would rather quote a number and have you exceed it than quote a number and have you not hit that number. So I think there's a very strong possibility that when the EPA numbers do come out, that we could see it start with the number 3. And now while I'm out on the street, I can talk a little bit about how the i5 drives. I've always been a big fan of the 5 Series because it kind of combines that comfort of a 7 Series, but with more of the driving spirit that you'd expect from a 3 Series. And lately, I have been enjoying the electric BMWs more than their gas engine equivalents. I said when I drove the 7 Series that I actually preferred how the i7 drove to the gas-powered 7 Series. Now, I have not driven the newest generation of this 5 Series. I've only driven this electric i5, but I am very pleasantly enjoying how this car handles. I think it has a perfectly compliant suspension, but it's not too cushy like a 7 Series. And BMW, we've criticized them recently with their steering feel, but I feel like they're starting to earn a little bit of their driving credibility back with these electric cars. This steering on the i5 is a little bit lighter than I'm used to in a lot of BMW cars, although maybe that's because I've driven a lot of M cars recently. But it does have a really nice weight and a really nice balance to it. Am I getting a lot of feedback from the road? No, not really, but honestly, that really hasn't been a characteristic of the 5 Series in quite a few generations now. This is the type of car that responds well to inputs, but it doesn't want to be too disturbing on a nice leisurely road to always be like vibrating in your hand with steering feel. So keep that in mind when you're looking at buying a 5 Series. Now, if for some reason this 340 horsepower eDrive 40 version isn't enough for you, which personally, I think it's plenty in my opinion, there is going to be a more powerful M Performance version. So the eDrive M60 xDrive, you're gonna get a second motor on the front axle, giving you all-wheel drive xDrive, but it's also going to give you significantly more power. So instead of the 340 horsepower that you get on the eDrive 40, you're gonna have about 600 horsepower. We don't have any performance statistics like 0 to 60 for it yet, but you can already guess that that is going to be a pretty brisk car, because that's about the same level of power that we have from the outgoing generation BMW M5 and its twin turbo V8. And we also have a boost function. It's super easy to do. We have a paddle here that says boost, pull it, and you're going to get max acceleration for a few seconds. So ready? Boost mode. Ooh, yeah, that definitely makes the i5 feel a lot quicker when you pull that paddle. Now, unfortunately, my drive of the i5 M60 is going to be at BMW's secret proving grounds in the south of France, and they would prefer if I didn't bring the camera in with me. What I can do is show you some B-roll footage of the car going around the track, and VoiceOver Jared is going to tell you exactly how the M60 drives.
BMW let us loose in the i5 M60 xDrive on its handling track with an engineer riding in the back seat to make on-the-fly adjustments using the computer and to hear out our feedback. Straight away, we could tell the M60 is a completely different beast, with its dual motors generating around 600 horsepower, a huge step up over the eDrive 40. Since we didn't know the track, BMW put an M4 pace car in front of us, and although that car could grip harder than us in the corners, we had no trouble keeping up with the M4 when the track straightened out. That's pretty darn impressive for a car that's not quite an M vehicle. The handling track is meant to simulate a real road, meaning it has bumps and rough pockets to test the suspension. In the standard personal mode, the i5 soaks up the bumps well and enables just enough body roll from the active roll suspension to keep things interesting from a driver's point of view. This is the same technology that you get in the BMW XM, though it's tuned a little softer here because the i5 isn't an M vehicle. We barely noticed the rear wheel steering, which feels natural and helps the i5 behave like a smaller car than it actually is. In sport mode though, just like a lot of other BMW vehicles, the steering gets a bit too heavy for our taste, and the rear steering becomes a lot more noticeable. We couldn't quite predict the rear steering as well when the car was in sport mode, and actually preferred driving it in the base personal mode. The suspension also gets a little firm in sport mode, but you can always put it right back into personal to get a more comfortable ride. We think the i5 offers just enough flexibility for people who want a sporty experience on demand, but want to be comfortable on their drive home from work. Adrenaline junkies will want to opt for the M60, which delivers M5-like straight-line performance, but we think that the eDrive 40 model will be fine for most buyers.
And if you're interested in learning more about how the i5 M60 drives, you can always read about it over at carbuzz.com. That concludes our time with the BMW i5 prototype. I would love to show you a little bit more of the car, including the interior interior and what it's going to look like without all of the camo, but we'll have to wait for BMW to reveal the car later this year in 2023, with the car arriving at dealers shortly after. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell to be alerted of all of our latest videos. And if you want to read more about my experience driving the i5 prototype, be sure to check out carbuzz.com. I'll see you next time.